If it's been snowing or raining heavily, there's been lots of frost, or if you're just in an area where there's lots of moisture, finding dry tinder like grass or dry fluffy inner bark can be almost impossible at times. One thing you're guaranteed to have when burning a fire is the fuel itself, wood, and being able to process wood down to a fine enough tinder to where it will ignite off of a spark from a ferro rod or an ember from a friction set or flint and steel is a skill that every woodsman should practice and feel comfortable doing. Even if the area you're in has a lot of moisture present, you should still be able to find dry wood. You can always process down a dead standing tree to get at the dry inner wood. What we want to do is use our knife to create really fine wood shavings to build up a Featherstick tinder bundle. You may think making good wood curls comes from what type of knife you use. That's not actually that big of a deal. Most knives will work quite well as long as they're good and sharp. A dull knife really isn't good for much. What's more important is the selection of your piece of wood. You want something that's nice and straight. If it's got a lot of curve to it or a wavy grain pattern or lots of knots, you're going to run into a lot of issues. Both of these pieces here have quite a bit of wave to them, quite a bit of a bend and lots of knots, so they're not going to be too suitable. When you begin making your curls, if you notice that the curls aren't staying together very well and they just crumble and flake away, likely your piece of wood is a little bit too degraded. It's decomposed too much. Your curls should hold up to a little bit of abuse. They shouldn't just flake away and disintegrate. So what we're looking for is a straight grain piece of wood with no knots in it. This is a little dead standing spruce. Spruce is pretty notorious for having a lot of knots, but there's a little 5-inch section right here with no knots, nice straight grain. This little 5-inch section will be plenty enough for a tinder bundle. So I got my piece of wood, and I'm looking at this section right here. Appears to be no knots, looks like it's nice and straight. First thing I'm going to do is remove the bark. So this is a nice piece of wood and should work quite nicely. It's got a nice straight grain, no knots. I'm just going to do a couple test curls to make sure that the wood isn't too decomposed. Those are some really nice looking curls. They're not turning to dust when I grab them. They still have a lot of strength to them. So this should work quite nicely for a tinder bundle. Now you certainly could take a bunch of shavings off of this piece of wood as they fall off, gather them up, and use a big pile of shavings as your tinder bundle. I prefer to keep mine attached to the piece of wood. That way I don't have to worry about collecting those shavings up. I don't have to worry about the wind blowing them away. And when I'm actually trying to ignite this, I don't have to worry about my tinder bundle falling apart. So to make these really fine shavings, you need to get the technique down first. You lay your blade flat on the piece of wood so that bevel is not engaging at all. And slowly you just rotate your knife forward. And once you find that bevel starts to come into contact with the wood and create shavings, that's the angle you want to maintain. This is the part that takes a little bit of practice, is finding that angle and being able to maintain it. As I'm making these shavings, I'm rotating the piece of wood. I'm actually going to go all the way around the entire circumference of this piece of wood, making shavings the whole way, pushing the wood towards the middle. You'll notice when I'm making these shavings, after I make one, I'll rotate my knife up to push that shaving forward to get it out of the way so I don't cut it on my next pass. You'll notice that rather than having my knife perpendicular to this piece of wood, I actually have it at an angle. When you make these curls perpendicular, they roll up real tight. When I rotate my knife, they actually elongate, which gives you a lot more surface area to work with in the tinder bundle. So I've gone all the way around once. You can see just how fine it curls we're getting. I'm just going to keep on going around, pushing this wood to the middle until I run out of wood on this side. Now that I've gone around a few times and I've got a bunch of these really fine curls, I'm going to get a little more aggressive with my knife, try and produce some larger curls. Once I work the diameter thin enough, I can just break that off. Now I'm going to start from up here and push more curls towards the middle. I don't want to go all the way to my other curls. I want to leave a little bit of a gap so as not to break my existing curls off. So now that we are done here, got it cut right down, and just break off our little tinder ball, and that is a Featherstick tinder bundle, ready for ignition. Now when it comes to igniting this, all we have to do is make a little spot in here where we can put an ember. So right in there is where I'll drop my ember, and I'll close up these curls around it and blow this into a flame. We'll ignite this one using an ember from flint and steel. Go ahead and put it in our little pocket here. Just close those curls up around it. Now if you are in an area where it's really wet and you need to rely on breaking down a dead standing tree to get at some dry wood, works as well. I've already split this log in half. The inside's nice and dry. This section of the log has no knots in it, so I'm going to try and get a nice piece of wood off of here. Now I want to demonstrate that it's not necessarily what knife you use. As long as it's sharp, it should do the trick. So I'll make this next one with my other knife. This first knife that I used has a Scandinavian grind on it, which lends it to be pretty good for wood carving. This knife has a slight hollow grind and then just a secondary bevel. So to begin, we might have some runoff in the grain. I'm just going to use my knife, round off some of these harsher edges, and just try to get all the grain running properly. So with our other knife, different grind on it, we'll do the exact same thing, lay it flat, and just begin to roll the edge forward until we find where it bites in. Right there, it starts to bite in, so that's the angle that we are looking to maintain. And you can see those nice fine curls that we're getting, which is exactly what we want. Alright, so we got another nice little Featherstick tinder bundle. This one we're going to use a ferro rod to light it. I always like to scrape my ferro rod, get some extra shavings into the tinder bundle before I spark it. Didn't really intend for that to happen, but oh, well, there she goes anyways. Let that catch and throw it into the fire lay. So there you have it, just a real simple way to utilize dry wood to create a real fine tinder bundle capable of igniting off of an ember or a spark. It's a great little skill to have and can certainly help you out in wet conditions. As always, thank you for watching. I'll be back right away with another video. Hope to see you there. Until then, God bless and happy trails.